Princess Elira of the Sarathian Empire had never felt safe in her own palace. The glittering halls, filled with crystal chandeliers and polished floors, were meant to be a symbol of her family's power. But to her, they felt like a cage. Every corner echoed with whispers, and every shadow seemed to hide eyes watching her. She had been born into royalty, but royalty came with expectations she could not meet and dangers she could not see. The Sarathian Empire was vast, controlling dozens of star systems, and Elira's life had been mapped out long before she could walk. Every day brought lessons in diplomacy, history, and etiquette. She was trained to smile at people she did not trust, to nod in agreement with rulers she despised, and to hide her fears behind a mask of grace. But deep down, Elira longed for something she could not name. Freedom, safety, a place where she could be herself without constant surveillance. The palace had guards everywhere, but Elira did not feel protected by them. The empire had enemies, some visible and some hidden, and even a princess could be a target. She remembered the first time she had seen someone disappear from the palace without a trace. She had been 8, hiding behind a velvet curtain, and the image of her friend's empty bed haunted her for years. From that day, Elira learned to trust no one fully. And yet there was one place where she had felt a strange comfort, a fragile peace she had never found in the palace: human starships. Humans were different from the Sarathians. They did not move like machines of duty, nor did they speak in calculated tones meant to impress. They laughed, they argued, they made mistakes, and somehow that made Elira feel alive. She had first stepped aboard a human freighter when she was 13. Her father had sent her as a gesture of goodwill. But she remembered the moment she walked onto the ship as if it were yesterday. The hum of engines, the smell of recycled air mixed with faint coffee, and the way the crew worked together without pretense, it all felt real. For the first time, Elira could breathe without thinking about royal protocol. She could laugh without worrying about how it would be recorded. She could even be clumsy and know that no one would judge her for it. Humans were messy, but in their messiness, they offered her something she had never experienced in her life: trust. On one of her secret visits, Elira had wandered into the ship's engine room, hiding behind a massive fusion core. She watched as the human engineers worked together, shouting over the roar of machinery, laughing at mistakes, helping each other without ceremony. Elira felt a pang of longing. In the Sarathian Empire, power and perfection were everything. Here it was enough to be alive, to help, to care. But Elira knew she could not stay long. Her father had strict rules, and the Empire's security networks were always watching. Even a moment of joy on a human ship could become a scandal if discovered. Still, she made plans. She memorized schedules, learned when the human freighters would pass near her planet, and created excuses to slip away. Each escape was a small rebellion, a tiny victory in a life that often felt dictated by others. One evening, Elira stood on the observation deck of a human starship as it left orbit. The stars stretched infinitely in all directions, and she felt the weight of her palace fade. For the first time in her life, she felt like herself. No titles, no expectations, no traps. Just Elira floating among the stars. She leaned against the cold metal railing and whispered almost to herself, Here I am safe." The captain, a tall human with a kind smile, noticed her staring at the stars. "You like it out here?" he asked. Elira nodded, her voice barely audible. "I've never felt like I belonged anywhere." Until now, the captain did not question her words. Humans had a strange way of accepting people without needing reasons or titles. They offered her something that her empire never could: acceptance. But Elira knew this peace could not last. Soon the empire would call her back. Rules, duties, and dangers would pull her from this fragile sanctuary. Yet in that moment, surrounded by humans who moved with warmth and imperfection, she let herself hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to survive and be herself. Not as a princess, but as Elira. Returning to her palace was always harder than leaving it. Princess Elira walked through the grand corridors, the chandeliers casting a cold, artificial glow on her pale face. The walls seemed taller now, the ceilings higher and the air heavier. Every smile she gave to her advisors felt like a mask glued to her skin, every nod like chains tightening around her wrists. She had tasted freedom on human starships, and the contrast made her royal life feel suffocating. Her father, Emperor Veyron, was a man of unyielding authority. He ruled with precision, expecting every word and action from his daughter to reflect the perfection of the Sarathian Empire. He did not tolerate mistakes, rebellion, or disobedience. Elira had long learned to hide her thoughts, to swallow her emotions, and to obey without question. Yet every secret journey to a human ship chipped away at that obedience, leaving a small fire of rebellion burning quietly in her chest. One evening, as she practiced a ceremonial greeting in her chambers, her reflection in the polished metal mirror seemed foreign to her. The girl staring back had eyes filled with longing and fear. The reflection reminded her of the last human ship she had visited, of the laughter, the warmth, and the strange, chaotic beauty of their world. Elira wondered if she would ever be able to carry that freedom into her own life, or if she was doomed to be a puppet in golden chains. Her thoughts were interrupted by a summons. A high-ranking official entered the room, bowing low. "Your Highness, we have reports of human freighters passing near the outer sectors. Your presence was observed in transit. The Emperor wishes to speak with you immediately." Elira's heart sank. She had been careful, meticulous even, but somehow someone had noticed. The safety she had felt among humans was fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a cliff. Now the Empire's eyes were on her, and the consequences of discovery could be dire. She was escorted to the throne room, each step heavy with dread. The room was cold and imposing, filled with advisors and generals whose faces were carved from stone. Her father's gaze met hers, sharp and unyielding. "Elira," he said, his voice calm but filled with authority, "we have learned of your excursions. Tell me, why do you risk the honor and security of our family?" Elira's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to explain, to tell him about the humans who had shown her kindness, who had treated her as more than a title or a commodity. But the words felt impossible. How could she describe warmth to a man who saw everything as strategy and duty? How could she explain trust to someone who believed fear was protection? Instead, she stayed silent, her small hands clenching at her sides. Her silence was its own rebellion. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Silence is not acceptable. You are a princess of the Sarathian Empire. You are meant to lead, to obey, to be untouchable. And yet you seek what? Companionship among humans? Adventure? Foolishness will cost you dearly." Elira's chest hurt. She had known this moment might come. But the cold, absolute finality of her father's words cut deeper than she imagined. The Empire demanded obedience. Her heart demanded freedom, and the human starships called to her with the promise of both. That night she could not sleep. She walked through the palace gardens, her footsteps quiet against the polished stone. The stars above seemed dim compared to the brilliance she had seen aboard human vessels. Elira longed to escape, to feel the hum of engines beneath her feet, to hear laughter that was real, not measured. A small smile touched her lips as a plan began to form. The humans had offered her more than safety. They had offered her hope. Perhaps she could not change her father, nor the empire that bound her, but she could find a way to live in between. She could visit the stars, feel the freedom of movement, and still honor her duty, somehow. But Elira knew the Empire would not forgive disobedience. Every excursion risked exposure. Every smile aboard a human ship was a gamble, and the shadow of punishment loomed over her like a storm waiting to break. Yet for the first time Elira felt something stronger than fear. Determination. "I will find a way," she whispered to herself, staring at the dark sky above. "I will be free, even if only for a moment. Even if only on human starships I will breathe." The seed of rebellion had been planted, small and fragile, but alive. And somewhere deep inside, Elira realized that her life as a princess did not define her. It was only a part of her story, and the stars were vast enough to hold both duty and dreams. The next morning, Princess Elira moved with careful precision through the palace. Every step, every gesture had to be perfect. Yet beneath the perfection, her mind raced with plans. The humans had shown her that courage and kindness could exist together, that loyalty was not dictated by fear. She longed to feel that again. The Empire, however, would not allow it. They viewed human starships as unpredictable, dangerous, and Elira as a fragile piece in a game she had not chosen to play. She waited for her chance. Hours passed in tense preparation. Guards walked the corridors, their movements precise, their eyes sharp. Advisors whispered strategy in hushed tones. Elira, hidden behind a mask of calm, memorized their patterns, noting every shift, every blind spot. Her hands trembled slightly, but her heart burned with resolve. She was not running from duty. She was running toward life. That evening, she slipped from her chambers under the pretense of visiting the meditation gardens. The corridors were dim, the palace quiet, and she moved like a shadow. Every step was a gamble. Every corner could hide discovery. The lessons in etiquette and obedience she had been forced to memorize now served her differently. They taught her patience, observation, and timing. She reached the outer gates where a hidden docking bay held the freighter she had arranged to meet. The human crew was waiting just as she had hoped. Captain Wren, the tall man with the kind eyes, gave a small, knowing nod. Illyra felt her chest tighten with relief. She had not felt this alive in years. Stepping onto the ship, she left behind the golden chains of her palace, replacing them with the unpredictable warmth of human companionship. The engines roared to life, and Illyra leaned against the railing, feeling the familiar hum beneath her feet. She closed her eyes, letting the vibration soothe her racing heart. "I'm safe," she whispered to herself, almost in disbelief. For the first time, safety did not feel like a cage. But freedom rarely comes without cost. News of her disappearance spread through the Sarathian Empire like wildfire. By the time the ship had cleared the planet's atmosphere, word had reached her father. Guards, warships, and emissaries were already mobilizing. The Empire would not let a princess wander freely among humans, not when her presence alone could compromise political stability. Illyra knew they would come, and soon. Captain Wren noticed the change in her expression and asked softly, "Worried?" Illyra nodded, her fingers tightening on the railing. "They'll come for me." "They always do." Wren's eyes were steady. "Then we'll meet them. And you won't be alone." Humans were not perfect, but their courage was raw, real. Illyra felt a swell of admiration and trust. She realized she had never known loyalty until now. The ship glided through the blackness of space, stars streaking past like silver threads. Illyra's mind raced with questions. Could she outrun the Empire? Could she convince them that humans were allies, not threats? Could she ever merge her two worlds? The cold, calculated life of royalty and the chaotic, vibrant freedom of human starships? Hours later, the freighter detected a Sarathian patrol closing in. Illyra's stomach tightened. The Empire's ships were fast, well-equipped, and relentless. But the human crew moved with a coordination that felt almost alive. They did not panic. They did not calculate chances, they acted. Illyra watched as humans lifted, shouted, and worked together with an instinctive rhythm, solving problems in ways her Empire's rigid training could never teach. In that moment, Illyra understood the truth she had been avoiding. The Sarathian Empire taught precision and obedience, but humans taught bravery and heart. Humans could make mistakes, yet they still achieved wonders because they never let fear stop them. Illyra had believed she could only survive by hiding in shadows. Now she saw she could thrive with courage, with allies who trusted her for who she was, not what she represented. The patrol ship fired, but the humans outmaneuvered it with daring maneuvers that defied the laws of Sarathian protocol. Illyra clung to the railing, her heart pounding with exhilaration. She laughed, a clear, joyful sound that had no place in the palace halls. The humans cheered as their ship dove into a comet's tail, shaking off pursuit. Illyra realized something profound. She was not just running. She was learning to live. As the freighter disappeared into the vast darkness, Illyra turned to Captain Wren. "Thank you for trusting me," he smiled. "You don't need thanks. You're brave. That's enough." Illyra's chest swelled with gratitude and pride. For the first time, she felt she had earned her own life. Not as a princess, not as a symbol, but as Illyra, a girl who chose courage over fear, freedom over comfort. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of danger, hope, and infinite possibility. And Illyra knew deep inside that the human starships were not just her escape. They were her home, her shield, and the only place she had ever truly felt alive. Princess Illyra's brief taste of freedom did not last long. The Sarathian Empire was relentless, and they would not allow a royal to roam among humans unchecked. Word of her escape had spread through imperial networks like wildfire, and soon, a fleet of Sarathian warships appeared on the fringes of the sector where Illyra's human allies traveled. The freighter she had boarded was smaller and less armed. But humans had something the Sarathians could not calculate: creativity, courage, and intuition. Elira watched as the crew scrambled to their stations, their movements unplanned but coordinated. Sparks flew, engines roared, and the hum of life aboard the ship became a battle rhythm. It was chaos, yet it worked. Elira felt a familiar thrill in her chest. This was how humans survived, through heart, not protocol. "Princess, stay low," Captain Wren said calmly, though his voice carried the tension of the moment. Elira obeyed, ducking behind the railing, her heart pounding in her ears. The freighter weaved through asteroid fields, dodged lasers, and used every trick the humans could invent in the moment. Elira had seen drills and simulations aboard her palace ships, but nothing had prepared her for this raw, adaptive brilliance. Humans didn't calculate everything. They trusted each other to act. As the Sarathian fleet closed in, Elira's mind raced. She felt fear, but it was different now. It was sharp, alive, and motivating, not crushing or paralyzing like the fear she had felt in her palace. She realized she had changed. The girl who once trembled behind curtains, hiding from shadows, now felt the pulse of life inside her, daring her to act, to think, to survive. One of the patrol ships opened fire, its beam cutting dangerously close. The freighter shuddered, alarms blaring. Elira's stomach knotted, but she saw the humans around her adapt instantly. They created diversions, used the asteroid field to shield themselves, and coordinated maneuvers with intuition and trust rather than strict orders. Elira's breath caught in awe. This was not just skill, this was brilliance born of courage and heart. "You're incredible," she whispered, almost to herself. Captain Wren glanced at her and smiled. "This is what humans do. We survive. We fight, we improvise, we protect each other. You can too." Elira felt the truth of his words settle into her chest. Protection was not about rules or power. It was about care, loyalty, and courage. She wanted to be part of that world, fully and without fear. The freighter darted through a narrow canyon in the asteroid belt, leaving the Sarathian fleet behind, at least temporarily. Elira watched the stars blur past, feeling the wind of the engines vibrate through her body. She laughed aloud, the sound raw and free, a sound she had never been allowed to make in her palace. Humans cheered around her, their joy unrestrained, their bravery infectious. Elira realized that courage was not just action, it was freedom. Hours later, when the freighter had put some distance between itself and the pursuing fleet, Elira emerged from her hiding place. Her eyes were wide with wonder, her hair messy from the chaos, her hands trembling. Captain Wren handed her a cup of water, his expression gentle but firm. "You held up well," he said. Elira smiled faintly, feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. She had faced the might of her empire and survived, not through fear, not through obedience, but through trust and courage, the very qualities her people had dismissed as weakness. Elira sat by the observation deck, staring at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before her, filled with both danger and possibility. She thought of her father, the palace, and the life she had left behind. They were all part of her story, but she was beginning to understand that they did not define her. She had found a new truth among humans. Life was meant to be lived boldly, with heart and courage, not just followed according to rules and expectations. In the days that followed, the human crew taught her more than survival skills. They taught her trust, teamwork, and bravery. Elira learned how to pilot small vessels, navigate through asteroid fields, and read signals from distant stars. Every lesson reinforced a single truth. Humans were extraordinary because they dared to act, dared to care, and dared to hope when everything seemed lost. For the first time in her life, Elira felt a spark of real confidence. The Empire could hunt her, the palace could demand her return, but aboard the human starships she had discovered her own strength. She was no longer just a princess in hiding. She was Elira, a girl of courage, loyalty, and heart, who had seen what it truly meant to be alive. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that she would never look at the stars the same way again. Days passed, and Princess Elira felt the exhilaration of freedom settle into a quiet rhythm. The human freighter had become more than a refuge. It was a school, a home, and a sanctuary. Elira learned not only to pilot small ships, but to understand human ingenuity. The way they adapted to problems instantly, relied on each other, and never gave up even when hope seemed thin. Every lesson filled her with awe, making her realize that the Sarathian Empire had underestimated humans completely. But freedom came with a price. Scouts from the Sarathian Empire were everywhere, scanning the star systems for her signature. Even as the freighter glided through empty space, Elira felt the looming shadow of her father's authority pressing from all sides. She remembered the cold, sharp gaze of Emperor Veyron in the throne room, and it ignited a determination she had never felt before. She would not be captured. Not now, not ever. The humans noticed her tension, though they never judged it. "You're thinking too much," Captain Wren said one evening, as Elira watched the stars from the observation deck. "Out here you need to trust what you see, what you feel, and the people around you. Fear won't save you. Courage will." Elira took a deep breath. His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of truth. She realized that all her palace lessons, the rigid training, the endless rules, could never teach her what humans were showing her. Trust in action, bravery through heart. The next morning, the freighter's sensors detected multiple Sarathian patrols converging on their location. Elira felt the familiar knot of fear, but it was different now. It no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it sharpened her senses, focused her mind. She moved among the crew, assisting with calculations, offering suggestions, and even helping to plan evasive maneuvers. The humans treated her as one of them, not as a princess. Their trust gave her confidence she had never known in the Empire's walls. The first encounter came suddenly. A Sarathian patrol vessel emerged from behind a dense asteroid cluster, its weapons glowing ominously. Captain Wren barked orders, and Elira sprang into action. They dove through asteroid fields, ducked behind drifting comets, and used every piece of knowledge Elira had absorbed during her short time among humans. The freighter moved with a blend of chaos and precision, and Elira marveled at how the humans turned panic into strategy, mistakes into opportunities. One laser blast struck the freighter's hull and the alarms blared. Elira's heart raced, but she felt no fear. Instead, she felt a surge of clarity. She ran to the control panel, adjusting shields and rerouting power, following instinct more than training. Captain Wren glanced at her, astonished. "You're learning fast," he said. Elira's lips curved in a small, proud smile. For the first time, she was not hiding behind a title. She was acting, surviving, living. Hours of evasive maneuvers followed, each one pushing the freighter and its crew to their limits. Elira began to understand the rhythm of humans in crisis. They did not panic. They did not wait for orders. They created solutions on the spot, each action building on trust and experience. The Sarathian Empire, with all its discipline and perfection, could not match this living, breathing ingenuity. Elira felt a thrill of hope. Perhaps she could truly belong here. That night, the freighter finally slipped into a hidden nebula, masking their presence from the pursuing fleet. Elira sat on the observation deck, staring at the twinkling stars beyond the swirling clouds of cosmic gas. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear but from adrenaline and the intensity of survival. She whispered softly, "I can do this. I will do this." Captain Wren joined her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've changed," he said. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone out there counting on you. Humans fight with their hearts. You're learning the same." Elira's chest swelled with gratitude. She realized that humans had taught her more than survival. They had shown her courage, empathy, and trust in ways her empire never could. The princess finally smiled fully. A rare, bright, and fearless expression. She had faced the Empire's wrath and lived not through obedience or fear, but through bravery, trust, and human ingenuity. The freighter floated quietly in the nebula, hidden from enemy eyes, and Elira understood that this was just the beginning. Her life would never be the same. She would not return to the shadows of her palace. She had found her place among humans, and for the first time she truly felt alive. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, full of danger, hope, and endless possibilities. And Elira, the princess who had once felt safe nowhere, finally understood that the galaxy could be hers, not as a prisoner, but as a free, courageous soul. The Sarathian fleet had not given up. Days of pursuit had only made the Empire more determined to capture Princess Elira. Yet aboard the human freighter, she had changed. No longer a passive passenger, Elira now understood how humans faced danger, with creativity, courage, and trust in each other. The skills she had learned and the bravery she had absorbed were about to be tested. "Captain, they're closing in fast," said one of the engineers, eyes wide as the radar displayed multiple vessels approaching. The freighter shuddered as it maneuvered through the debris of a nearby asteroid field. Elira watched the displays, heart pounding but mind clear. She remembered every lesson, every calculated risk the humans had taught her, and felt a boldness she had never known in her palace. "Let me help," she said firmly. Captain Wren glanced at her, surprised but trusting. "Go ahead, Elira." She moved to the control panel, analyzing the patrol ship's formations and speed. "If we split the fleet here and draw them toward the nebula, we can use the clouds to mask our movements," she suggested, pointing at the star map. Her hands moved swiftly, rerouting shields, plotting evasive maneuvers, and adjusting engine power. The captain's jaw tightened in admiration. "I underestimated you," he admitted. Elira smiled faintly. "You underestimated what humans can teach, and what I can learn." As the freighter executed the new strategy, the Sarathian patrols were drawn into the dense nebula. Visibility dropped. Sensors malfunctioned under the swirling cosmic gases. The humans had anticipated chaos, and Elira guided them through it, predicting the enemy's moves with a mix of intuition and logic. Each evasive maneuver carried them farther from capture, yet closer to the moment where they could turn the tables. Then Elira noticed something that made her pulse quicken. One of the patrol ships had broken formation, attempting a flanking maneuver to cut them off. Without hesitation, she called out, "Redirect the power to the aft cannons. We can disable their engines and buy time." Humans moved instantly, trusting her commands. The freighter's systems roared as energy surged to the weapons. A precise strike hit the Sarathian ship, disabling it and leaving it spinning helplessly in the nebula. Elira's chest swelled with triumph. She had never felt so alive, never felt so powerful without taking life, only using skill and strategy. The remaining patrols hesitated, unsure how to navigate the unpredictable nebula, while the freighter slipped through the shadows. Elira realized that the humans' greatest strength was their creativity, and now it was her strength too. She suggested diversions, decoys, and sudden maneuvers, all of which the humans executed flawlessly. Each success reinforced her confidence and ignited a sense of belonging she had never felt in her palace. Hours later, the fleet was finally left behind. The freighter emerged from the nebula, and Elira stood on the observation deck staring at the stars. Her hands were sore from constant action, her heart still racing, but she felt an overwhelming sense of achievement. For the first time, she had faced the Empire head-on and survived, not through obedience, not through hiding, but through courage, trust, and ingenuity. Captain Wren approached her quietly. "You did more than survive, Elira. You led. You showed us a way we couldn't have done alone." Elira felt a warmth rise in her chest. Humans had not only protected her, they had elevated her, trusted her, and believed in her ability to rise beyond fear. In the Empire, she had always been a symbol, a fragile princess to be controlled. Now she was Elira, a thinker, a strategist, a survivor. That night the freighter floated in silence, stars glittering all around. Elira leaned against the railing, the nebula now behind them, and whispered softly, "I am not afraid anymore." She realized that bravery was not the absence of fear, it was the courage to act despite it, the wisdom to trust others, and the heart to never give up. In the distance, new star systems stretched endlessly, each one full of danger, hope, and possibility. Elira understood that the galaxy was no longer a cage, but a canvas, and aboard human starships, she had finally found the place where she belonged, not as a princess bound by expectation, but as Elira, a girl who dared to be brave, who trusted, who lived. For the first time in her life, Elira smiled with certainty. The Empire could chase her, the stars could challenge her, but aboard these ships surrounded by humans, she had discovered a freedom and courage that no title could ever take away. Days turned into weeks, and Princess Elira's life aboard the human freighter settled into a new rhythm. The freighter had become more than a ship. It was a home, a school, a sanctuary. She learned not only to pilot and navigate, but to think like humans did, with courage, creativity, and trust in others. She no longer felt like a fragile princess hiding in the shadows of her empire. She was Elira, alive, capable, and free. The Sarathian Empire, relentless as always, had continued to search for her. Yet each attempt to capture her had failed. Every time, humans had proven that bravery and ingenuity could outmatch raw power and rigid protocol. Elira had become a part of this strength, no longer an observer but a strategist, a participant, and a leader in her own right. One evening, as the freighter floated quietly near the edge of an uncharted system, Elira stood on the observation deck staring at the stars. She remembered the first time she had set foot on a human ship, the fear, the awe, and the fragile hope that she could belong somewhere. Now she realized that hope had grown into certainty. She was not alone. She was not powerless. She was free. Captain Wren approached her, leaning against the railing. "You've changed a lot since the first day you stepped on this ship," he said gently. Elira smiled, the stars reflecting in her eyes. "Humans showed me that courage is not about rules or perfection," she said softly. "It's about heart, about trust, about doing what must be done even when it's frightening." Wren nodded. "And you've learned well. The Empire underestimated you and us, but you've shown what can happen when someone refuses to be controlled, when someone dares to act with both courage and wisdom." Elira felt warmth rise in her chest. For the first time, someone recognized her not for her title, but for who she truly was. The freighter crew gathered around, smiling and joking in their messy, imperfect way. Elira laughed with them, fully and without hesitation. She realized she had never experienced such acceptance in her palace. Here, humans did not care about her royal blood. They cared about her actions, her choices, and her heart. For the first time, Elira knew what true belonging felt like. Later that night, Elira retired to a quiet corner of the ship, watching distant stars streak by. She thought of her father, the palace, and the life she had left behind. She did not feel anger or sadness. She felt clarity. Her past had shaped her, yes, but it did not define her. She had chosen her own path, guided by courage, loyalty, and the heart she had discovered among humans. A small, serene smile spread across her face. She had escaped the golden cage of royalty, but she had gained something far greater: life, freedom, and the chance to be herself. Elira knew that the Empire could continue to pursue her, but she was no longer afraid. She had the humans at her side, and more importantly, she had the courage that could never be taken away. As the freighter prepared to leave the system, Elira turned to look at the crew one last time before taking her place at the controls. "Let's see where the stars take us," she said, her voice steady and confident. The humans cheered, ready for the next adventure, ready to trust in her guidance. Elira felt a swell of pride and hope. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of danger, wonder, and infinite possibilities. Elira's journey had begun as a frightened princess seeking safety, but now she was more than that. She was a symbol of courage, a testament to trust, and a living proof that the heart could defy fear and oppression. As the human freighter disappeared into the glittering tapestry of stars, Elira leaned against the railing, feeling the hum of the engines beneath her. She was not just a passenger. She was a pilot of her own destiny, a protector of her newfound family, and a girl who had learned that the galaxy was vast enough to hold both adventure and freedom. And in that moment, Princess Elira smiled with certainty, knowing that she was finally home, among humans, among the stars, and among the life she had chosen for herself.